Hello and welcome back, all you spectators. Here we go. Jesus and I are at it again with yet another incredible creator interview for your ear pleasure. This week, we've got the artist and co-creator of A Righteous Thirst for Vengeance, André Lima Araújo. So make ready the attack ships for Orion's shoulder and keep your android guts where I can see them. This is episode 19.
This is a conspiracy. That's what this is.
Just begging to course its way through your veins.
Let's just for a moment speculate, shall we?
You're into comic books, aren't you?
I'm a nerd.
But you do like comic books.
Comic books aren't just for sad nerds anymore.
Do you think we need one more?
Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
Do you think we need one more?
Objection, calls for speculation, move to strike.
This is a bad idea. This is a bad idea.
All right, we'll get one more.
Spectators, a comic book podcast with Jake and Jesus.
Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Spectales, a comic book podcast, where we ask both collectors and creators, what is your comic book grail tale? Thank you so much for tuning in. We're your hosts, Jake and Jesus. Jesus, how's it going today?
It's going whimsical today.
Oh, whimsical is the word of the day. Nice.
Whimsical. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it matches how it's going, but I'm definitely using it. If I learn that word, it's going whimsical.
Yeah, I'm not sure how long you're going to be able to keep this word of the day stuff up. I got to say, since we're recording today, are you excited for the drop of the Spider-Man trailer that's supposed to be coming at any moment?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much stuff going on. At this point, I'm just so... I don't want to build it up too much. I don't want to build it up too much and then it lets me down. But it's just...
Are you kidding me? We don't have to build it up. The entire world has already built this up to an astronomical... There's no way it can fulfill everybody's dreams. It's just impossible.
That's exactly what I'm saying. So it is what it is. I can't wait to watch the movie. Stop trailering me with it. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about it.
Nice. Okay, well, last week we had fun chatting with Stray Dogs creator and writer Tony Fleece. I highly recommend you catch up on that episode if you missed it. But today we've got another incredibly talented guest on the show. He is a Portuguese architect and comic book creator who kicked off his career as an artist with Marvel, working on titles such as Avengers AI, Spider-Verse, and Inhumans. He also wrote and drew the art for his first creator-owned project, Man Plus, and you can currently see his gorgeous artwork displayed prominently in the absolutely engrossing series, A Righteous Thirst for Vengeance. He is André Lima Araújo.
That was a perfect pronunciation for my last name. Thank you.
I was practicing it in the shower this morning, I have to admit. No, André, thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you?
I'm very well. So for just a couple of things first, thank you very much for the invite. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you, Jake, and you, Jesus. And I apologize for my voice because I am with a cold, so I won't sound as good as I'd like to, but we can make it.
You are absolutely forgiven. We won't even mention it again.
Okay.
We appreciate you coming on, André.
Okay, André. So, first and foremost, I said it, but I mean every word. A Righteous Thirst for Vengeance is just one of my absolute favorite reads right now. The first issue came out in October. The latest issue came out last week, I believe. Yeah. Let's just jump really right into it. How'd you get involved in that?
Oh, well, me and Rick. So first, thank you very much for the nice words. We are working very hard on it, and we are thrilled with the reception. And I appreciate you saying all that. It's always very nice to hear. But me and Rick, we have been trying to work together for like 2 or 3 years by now. Like really, with actually trying to find place in my schedule, and it was his schedule that wasn't allowing because he was doing a lot of comic books at first, and he got the Deadly Class gig where he was the showrunner of the TV show as well. Mm-hmm. So he just couldn't do it at the time. And then I started working on something with Brian Bendis that I did. It's going to be launched next year, and then I couldn't do it, and then we both could finally, and we just got together and did this thing that we wanted to do for a very long time, which was creating a book together. He is one of my absolute favorite writers. I just love his comics very much, and he invited me then to one of his ideas that was this idea that for a righteous thirst for vengeance. And the thing, at first he was explaining it to me, and he had a couple of takes on why this was good for us. Because one, it was pretty unexpected. He's known for doing a lot of sci-fi and fantasy and crazy stuff. Mm-hmm. And I am known, for people that follow my work, because I haven't published a lot of Criterion stuff until now. But people that follow my work know and have seen my pitches and know that I have also a lot of sci-fi stuff going on in the background. So that was good to subvert a bit of the expectations. Also, it would put both of us in unfamiliar territory, which I appreciate as an artist. And it almost felt like it was too easy to do a science fiction book with him. And then it was because I was telling him, like, I need something here, not just a straightforward, crime story. I need something here for me to just to really push me, because that's what I want to do. And he and I started talking about doing this type of storytelling that is what you see in the book, that seems to be really hitting people. That is this detailed, bit-by-bit type of storytelling, and we exchanged a lot of references. And so we built this book based on this idea that we would pay a lot of attention to the craft of the narrative. And that's what has been guiding us until now, and will guide us until the end of this book.
Well, I want to comment, interject here. The mood that you guys set, both with the artwork and the writing, is just captivating. I know I said it earlier, but like, it puts you on the edge of your seat. You don't really understand where fully you're going, but you can't help but be just pulled along by the visuals and the writing. You just turning the page, every page, hoping you get another breadcrumb, just another piece that's going to pull you a little bit further along. It's a great story.
Yeah, thanks. Because that was really the thing. Like, for the story that we wanted, that is so full of mystery, if we couldn't pull the correct storytelling that would like engross people to follow it along, even though we are revealing just bit by bit, it will just fail, because it would be either boring or very confusing, and we don't want that. So we wanted to make sure that the story is something that you can follow along. You don't understand quite well the motivations, what he's doing or why, in the sense of the grand scope of things, like where is he going with this, the main character, Sonny. But you understand what is happening in that issue, and you can follow that. And that's what we want. And, as issues will mount in, you will get a lot more things going on, and you will get a lot more answers going on. I can promise you that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't, and we'll certainly do another reminder of this, but A Righteous Thirst for Vengeance, issue 2 came out on November 10th. Issue 3 drops on December 22nd, and issue 4 drops on January 19th.
I was going to give you this bit of knowledge that I just received today, the script for number 7, and I was working on it until we started recording. So that's where we are.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh,
nice.
God. Okay, thank God.
He couldn't, the way that we are doing it with this type of, again, narrative, it's the core of this thing. So we don't want to compromise that for anything. And certainly the length is the length that it will need to be to tell a complete story.
Good.
In the type of narrative that we are giving you with the issue 1. I have drawn issue 6 already. It's gone for Chris, which, by the way, deserves a big mention on colors. He's doing superb work. And
I love his work on Ice Cream Man, by the way.
Yeah.
He's wonderful on Ice Cream Man.
He's fantastic. So and I can tell you that all these issues, they are all like that, in the sense of a very well crafted story, in my opinion. Obviously, you guys or whoever might think otherwise, but it's the same type of craft that we are doing, and we don't want to compromise that for anything in the world.
Wonderful. I had just only seen an announcement for release dates up to number 4, so I was terrified that it was
No. I guess that's because that's where they are at with the announcements. But no,
yes. Okay.
We just delivered like this week we were discussing the cover for issue 6, for example. That's going for solicits for the catalog this week.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So that's
Wonderful.
Do not worry. You will have much more.
I'm gonna need it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I want to transition again, just talking a little bit more about your background as an architect.
Yeah.
So, reading your books, Man Plus, A Righteous Thirst for Vengeance, there are just gorgeous cityscapes and world building that you do visually that I want to know. Does your background as an architect influence the spaces that you're creating in the panels?
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. I mean, there's no escape from that. But I think that the architecture for me, I don't draw the cityscapes because I have a degree as an architect. I always wanted to draw them, and I always been enthralled by them. I always been in love with the books that showed that type of space, and that's why I became an architect in the first place.
Oh,
So it's a longer road for me than that. I don't draw those things and those buildings because I am an architect. I am an architect because I love depicting spaces like that. So it's the other way around. Architecture gave me a lot in terms of when I started working in comics. I had like a very good understanding of how an artistic project works, and I think that's the key thing here from architecture, really. And that's the most important thing. Undoubtedly, for example, if you are an architect and if you are reading issue 1, when Sonny gets to a house in a forest, he gets to like a cabin in the middle of the forest. That's what Rick described in the issue, that he got to a cabin. And I went and I started thinking what kind of house I wanted to draw. That is a Frank Lloyd Wright house that you see there. He's an American architect, for those that know. And
yes.
Any architect will immediately pick that up. So I like adding that kind of stuff. I have drawn many details from different architects in my buildings. I pay attention to the buildings, though. I pay attention to the windows. So there's a lot of background knowledge that I apply to drawing places and buildings and houses and little details like door knobs and stuff like that. So yeah.
The details in the structures that you create, and I would say you put as much detail into the characters you're creating as well. I just wanted to say I very much noticed in what I was reading that you put so much extra love and detail into the cityscapes and the structures, the buildings.
Yeah.
So
because that in the United States that's not as usual. But if you pick up any European comic book, like from the best artists or Japanese, I read a lot of stuff from Europe and from Japan. You will pick up that and my favorites, when I drop the names like Katsuhiroto or Moebius or Herman or Masamune Shiro, they all have this type of drawing. So that's the stuff that I grew up with loving and adoring. And I always wanted to use the same kind of depiction that they do. Like they really show you a place, and I want to do that. That's really one of my key things in comics. Just give you a living, breathing place.
Nice. Let's go ahead and jump into our first segment. So for those listening who have not listened to our podcast before, we have 3 basic segments. We're going to jump into recent pickups, something we either recently read or recently purchased or something along those lines, and then we will get into a Grail tale where André will let us know what his grail is and kind of how he got there or how it inspires him, or it's whatever he brings to the table in this case. And then we'll all close with some form of speculation. We always we know there's a lot of collectors who listen, so we like to give out a speculation at the end of the show. So we'll jump into recent pickups, and Jesus, you always lead this off, so I'm going to let you do it.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about one that's getting a lot of, publicity, and one not as much. I picked up What's the Furthest Place from Here by Rosenberg and Boss. Pretty interesting so far. Pretty thick book for the first one. It's an image book, so we've been talking about that a little bit in the past. There's not going to be any reprints on it, so pretty cool book so far. Pretty cool artwork as well, a little bit different. So I picked that one up. I'm reading it. It's pretty good so far. And then this is a lesser known one that was a recommendation from my LCS. It's an Aftershock book. It's called Search for Who. It has some really cool artwork on here. There's a lot of action too. It reminds me like Jet Li movies, kind of like just a bunch of action in it.
So martial arts.
Yeah, martial arts. So I picked up the first two copies that came out. I'm through the first book. It hits you right in the mouth right off the bat. So it's pretty cool. I recommend it as well. So those are the two pickups that I recently got this week.
I'll have to take a look at that second one. I also have What's the Furthest Place from Here. Being from Nebraska, that's how I feel all the time. But I did read it, and it's quite good, incredibly interesting. I cannot wait to see where it goes. And I gotta say, 60 pages or however many pages that first issue is, I was in awe. I was like, this is a thick book. It was a thick first issue. So
yeah, a lot of story in it too, man. A lot of story, bang for your buck on it. So
yep. It seemed basically like a double issue is what it feels like. So
yeah, I think so.
Who's the creative team on that one? On the Furthest Place from
it's
Rosenberg,
Boston Rosenberg, and then with Otsmain Ilhau.
Rosenberg wrote a really interesting thread yesterday. I don't know if you guys saw on Twitter about the creation of the book and all the problems that they are facing right now.
Yes, yeah, we did see that, and it's unfortunate that they're kind of dealing with some of those troubles.
Yeah,
including the fact that they're not doing the second prints of those.
But we got a second print for Righteous Thirst for the first issue, and like a week later, Image announced that they were not doing second printings anymore. So that's it's tough. At the same time, it's they are in a tough place because they have such a big success in hands. So that's a good thing as well.
Yes, I completely agree. It's unfortunate, and I do hope. I feel like Image is going to help some of these individuals solve some of the issues that are going on. I do feel like they have the artist's best interest in mind. I know that they're trying anyway. From all of the threads that I've read, you might be an Image insider and know a little bit more, but
I don't. I really don't. I just think that for people that want to make comics, for example, reading that thread is a good thing because you see what's going on behind a creator-owned comic and how much of the work it just falls on shoulders of the creators themselves, which is the case on this one. Lots of decisions that they've made, like you guys were mentioning the thickness of the issue, and he talks about that, like they combined stuff to make issues bigger, just to make sure they had the biggest launch that they could have. They could provide the reader the biggest amount of meat that they could. So all that stuff was super interesting. It's not just a down thread, like everything's going wrong. It's not that. The thread is super interesting.
Yeah, I read it too. I read the whole thing. I sent it to Jake. I also thought of it as, kind of like for creators, right? Because I think, Jake is a creator. I'm a creator. But it's like control what you can control, because there's going to be so much stuff that you can't control. So make sure that, your story is interesting. Your artwork is interesting. If you want to pack in more for the reader, pack in more for the reader. But just control what you could control, because there's going to be a pandemic, or there's going to be paper shortage, or there's going to be, no second printings, and you just have to kind of roll with the punches. So, it's really, great for them to be able to come out, but it does suck that they can't really find what their readership is because of the no second printings. But it's a good book. So I'm hoping that we get to see it continue because of all the hard work they put in, and the circumstances that they've had, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm sure they will, and it's like that's a pretty good philosophy that you had there. You just roll with the punches, because that's a good philosophy for life as well. Just go with what you have and control what you can control, and let go of the rest, because otherwise you just go crazy. And particularly in this type of work, man, you need to adapt and change as quickly as you can when you need to.
For sure.
Yep, absolutely. So Andre, do you have a recent pickup, something you recently read or want to talk about?
Oh, yeah, sure. I buy books all the time. The only thing is that I buy books with a completely different in a completely different way that most people in America buy them, which is I buy stuff from everywhere and from any time. I don't care, as long as the book is good. So just recently, for example, what I've been reading, I was on a trip last week. I went to Madrid, and I was reading Oblivion Song from Robert Kirkman, and I forgot the name of the artist, Lorenzo De Felici. And it's fantastic. I really like that book. I think it's a fantastic one. I'm catching up. I buy it in trades. I'm reading it on Comixology, and in Spain I found a great comic book shop. So I don't think that Kirkman needs more any more advertising than that. And I bought a bunch of really cool stuff that I found there, because if you guys know about paper shortage, there is a lot of Japanese books that don't have printings right now because of that. They print the new stuff. But like if you are collecting, let's say, 20th Century Boys from Naoki Urasawa, just one of the biggest books out there from Japan, and you cannot find from the original edition numbers 1 or 2 or something like that, they're gone. They're not reprinting them anymore. But because I'm fortunate enough to read Spanish as well, in Spain, they have an enormous collection of Japanese books translated to Spanish. Like, for example, Otomos Domu, that you can find anywhere, like for 10 years or more in English, has been in print in Spain throughout all this time. I have a Spanish copy. I found a couple of them on this store that I went to, and I just bought a bunch of pretty rare stuff that you can find anywhere, really. And I bought a couple of books from Naoki Urasawa, short stories. One is from the beginning of his career, like from 81 to 85, I think. And I will tell you this, I cannot recognize his art style on those stories. I simply cannot. It's completely different. And then the other one is pretty recent, and that one is like you can see on 20th Century Boys and all the books that we know from him. And I also bought, let me just pick, from Inio Asano, Solanin, and a bunch of other stuff. So just stuff that I can find in English right now, or some of them exist, but there was a huge universe, and I just spent way too much money on those books. And that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, like when you find a place that has everything you want, you're just like, okay, I don't know when I'm gonna come back, so let me just put everything in.
Yeah, I will tell you, I was going insane because for my honeymoon, I went to Japan, and I found obviously a lot of books from creators that I adore that I could not find anywhere else. So I bought there a bunch of stuff from Toriyama, from the guy that did Dragon Ball, books that I don't know what they are because the names are all in Japanese. There you go. Jesus is a really nice shirt. Yeah. And I found there a bunch of books like that I bought. I have a couple over here. I can show it to you. To review, for example, these two. This is stuff. Let me put this in. And this stuff, I don't even know. They have names like Dragon Boy and stuff like that. But I don't know what stories are about. I never read this. I cannot read Japanese. But I bought like 5 or 6 books of this. And they are translated in Spanish. I found out in that store. This is insane to me. And I was but because I had these, I decided to buy the ones that I didn't have yet. So that's what I've been buying and reading.
That's really interesting. And I have a question, if I could follow up on that, because you mentioned that, you read Spanish, obviously you speak English, and then obviously Portuguese is probably your first language, right?
Yeah.
So I read, write, whatever, Spanish and then English as well, but English is my second language. Mm-hmm. Whenever you pick those up in Spanish, obviously you're looking at the art, right? Like that's one of the things you really like is the art. Yeah. But do you ever buy a different language and kind of compare to see if it makes more sense with the original language or with a different language than it does with the language that you picked it up in first? Because I always think there's so many things with language, like just for example, from Spanish to English. And I have twin boys. In Spanish, there's 2 words to differentiate twin boys, so you can know if they're identical or if they're not, or if they're fraternal. In English, you have to say, they're twins, and then you have to ask, what kind of twins, fraternal or identical, right? So the language is so different. So my question is, do you sometimes see the differences in the art based on the language?
Yeah, first of all, I also have twin girls, so that's nice.
Oh, awesome. Oh man, twin dad, man.
We know the real pain, right?
Yes. How old are they?
They are just 11 months old.
Oh man, you're at the beginning. I'm 7. They're 7. My kids are 7 years old. So
I have an older. I don't want to transform this conversation because that's what happens with dads. I won't do that. I'm just going to say that I also have an older daughter. She's 3.5 years old. So yeah, I'm in the thick of it right now. But the language is pretty interesting because I do prefer to read in English when I can. There is something I cannot tell you what it is, but it's because I got so used to reading English through the years that when I read in Spanish, it doesn't sound the same to me. And same thing in Portuguese. We have many stuff that's translated in Portuguese as well. And I try to get the original. If it's an English book, like an American book, I will always get the original English version because I prefer the original language. If it's a translation, there are so many good translations in English. And the stuff that we get translated into Spanish and into Portuguese, for example, it's never, I imagine, from the original Japanese. It's a translation of a translation. Because in France, they have like an unending collection of manga as well. I can read French as well, happily for me. But and I think that the Spanish stuff comes from the French stuff, you know? So there's like, I know that the English stuff is being translated directly from Japanese, so I prefer to get as close to the source as possible.
Gotcha.
Nice.
That makes a lot of sense too.
Yeah.
So what you're basically saying throughout your whole recent pickup piece is that it pays to be bilingual, is what you're saying.
Very. I mean, in my case, multilingual for me because I can
Multilingual. Yeah, multilingual.
I can read in 4 languages, so that's fine for me. And I can get stuff from, I don't have that problem. Like, I was just advising a friend, a Portuguese friend, that he was telling me, I can find 20th Century Boys, for example. I can find this and that. Where are you getting these books? And I told him, you need to just drop your English bias, for example, and buy stuff in Spanish because you can find it all in Spanish. And for me, it was also a bit weird in the beginning, but now, they have, for example, I'm just looking because I found a book that I bought in Spanish, which is from Jiro Taniguchi. Do you guys know who Jiro Taniguchi is?
No, I do not.
I'm not familiar either.
He's very famous because he did a book called The Walking Man, for example. And he has these slice of life types of books, that I really tell people to seek it out because it's really good stuff. And he has a bunch of books. He died recently, unfortunately. He was still young, 6 years old, something like that. But he did in the beginning a lot of science fiction and other kinds of action books that I can find anywhere. And there it was in this store in Spanish, all of them. And I bought all of them, obviously, 3 or 4 books from him. That's what I got. So, it pays a lot to know to read Spanish or French to get a lot of Japanese books that you wouldn't get otherwise. Absolutely.
Man, this is I don't want to go off on a tangent on this, but I think this is actually a good conversation to have from a collection standpoint because we're collectors. We collect comic books, first appearances, stuff like that. And I've talked to Jake a little bit about this, that some of the international books from Marvel that are like, for example, Taskmaster, the first Taskmaster, which is Avengers 196. I think the French version, French or Italian, might be Italian. It has this beautiful blue background. And I just feel like that version of the cover is a better version than the one that we have here in the US. But the values aren't the same. There obviously people want the English version compared to it. But in aesthetically, I feel like that's the better version. And that's just an interesting conversation to have if we have some time.
Yeah. For example, the books that I showed you from Toriyama, this is a very small book you can see next to my face. And the Spanish version is a big one, double the size of this almost. So that's an interesting thing that you mentioned, the different formats and all that. And for example, here in Portugal, we get, I'm looking at my book that I did, Generation Gone, and the French, not here in Portugal because it was published in France, and the French edition has a thick hardcover and is much better looking than our original trade paperback. So there's a lot of that involved in this as well, like you said. Well, and they make collections, with stuff that sometimes you don't see paired together. Like I have the Weapon X book that I have from Barry Windsor Smith as the story that he did. I can't remember the name of the villain, but it's Wolverine against Lady something. And
that's right.
Yeah, in the middle of the snow.
Yeah.
You guys remember the story that he did?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think that Storm appears as well. So I got those. They collected those two together, as one Barry Windsor Smith thing. And for me, it's a fantastic way to get some books because I buy books based on art alone. If I pick up a book and I like drugs, I will get it. I don't care in what language that thing is. I'm gonna get it. And because I will follow the drawings, and I've these Dragon Ball, this Toriyama books that I showed you, they're in Japanese. I went through all of them, and I have the Otomo early stuff from before Domu and Akira that he did. He did a lot of short stories and like 90-page things that was published in magazines that it was only collected in Japan. I bought all of them, and I went through all of them. I read them, not the words, but the artwork, and you can learn a lot through that as well. So, there's a lot to be said about comic books because you can get them, in any language that you want. You might not be able to read the words, but you'll get something from it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I agree, and I thank you for bringing that up, Jesus. I do think that that's very valid and interesting because each piece is collectible for its own reasons at that point, right? Like it is, you're getting, while it's the same story, you are getting two different pieces, or you can, depending on the country it's from, right? I think that makes it unique and interesting. Andre, for my recent pickup, I went ahead and I picked up Man Plus. So that was something that I had not read before, but I did pick it up and I read it. And I wanted to just say, I think that it is, it's very you. And, I want to say that because having read some of your other work, I feel like obviously this is your first creator-owned series came out. And for those listening, Man Plus came out in 2016. It is a sci-fi epic story. I guess you would call it a crime story, sci-fi crime story that follows an android. In this particular case, I don't want to give too much of the plot line away, but ultimately a man has uploaded his wife's consciousness, her soul, into an android. And there is a chase ensuing between individuals, the police trying to solve the problem or solve the crime, so to speak, and the cyborgs, I guess, or the villains who are trying to kind of quiet this all down, hush everything. Ultimately, I was very, very interested in the story once I kind of read the synopsis. So I picked it up and I read it. I read the whole thing in once, like it was just page turner. I was reading everything. I mentioned the cityscapes, the art, the visuals. You have a knack for sci-fi. You mentioned that before earlier when we were talking that sci-fi is something that you kind of come naturally to.
Yeah.
And I wanted to just say, like, it is very evident in this, but would you mind talking a little bit about the creation of Man Plus, kind of where that came from and kind of what drove you? Because this had to have been just a labor of love. Like, it looks like a heavy lift project, and for you to write and draw it just had to have been a lot.
Yeah, no, but first of all, it was something that I really wanted to do as soon as I possibly could, which was I wanted to write and draw a book. And this is something that I want to do much more. And I was trying to do that before I started working with Brian Bendis and now Rick Remender. So I was actively trying to sell my pitches. And how these things work. Once I started working with Brian, I got offers from publishers to say, pitch us stuff because we want to publish something from you. And now I cannot. So we have to wait a bit. This is how it works.
Yeah.
It always comes either in abundance or you got nothing. But it's a good problem to have right now. And I always want to do that. And this book comes from my love from science fiction, from cyberpunk, particular stuff like Ghost in the Shell and Blade Runner. And I wanted to approach those themes. And I remember being in college and I was studying architecture and always thinking about comics as well. And I was thinking, I have this thing, I really want to do a story set in this type of setting. But I always felt like I don't have the knowledge to do it. I will just be, replicating what others have done. I'm just going to make a clone I didn't want to do that. So what happened was when I was doing my master thesis on architecture and I was finishing the degree and I was really getting more and more into comics again because I diverged a bit when I started studying architecture. And I just found this writer that you have the quotes in the beginning of each chapter. Those quotes that you can read on Man Plus are all quotes from books that I read for my master thesis. So I started thinking, okay, this is the stuff. Here's my substance to do my cyberpunk book. Now I have it. I have the knowledge that I needed to do it. I have the substance to put into it the themes that I can really express something here that I thought it was meaningful. And I really like the basic idea. You know, you're talking about not spoiling anything, but I mean, at this point, it's a book that's 5 years old, so I'm not spoiling anything. You can still enjoy it.
Oh yes.
The basic idea here is that it's pretty hard to establish what it's real or not in terms of soul or personality. Once you have, for example, a computer that can mimic to perfection what a human can do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, you have text on, I had a quote and I wrote a text in the end of each chapter as well. And I like that a fake journalist, that was me obviously writing the text, that he was arguing, like, how are we gonna legislate this? How can we, make a law for a certain type of behavior, for example, when you have a machine that replicates that behavior perfectly? So that's basically the heart of the story. And I really just enjoyed doing that so much, like writing and creating and having complete control of the project was just a joy for me at that point, because I was working for Marvel and it's a pretty different environment to work on. And this was just a labor of love, like you said. And it was literally a labor of love because I got almost no money from it.
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I want to say that there were moments in it where I felt the Fifth Element. There were moments in it where I felt Blade Runner, right? The notions, the pulling from sci-fi elements that people are familiar with, but while providing a new question, which you nailed it. Of course, it's your writing, so of course you would. But the soul, like, how do you not just legislate, but the way I read it was, we are going to get to a point in society where the government or somebody is going to have to define soul, right? They're going to get to a point where they're defining what is and isn't a soul, which is currently right now just defined by religions, not really governments.
Yeah, not just soul, but what is human, really. Because up to a point where it gets murky, and that's what I wanted to do is that science fiction is always about the questions that we have, the good science fiction anyway, is always about questions that we have nowadays, but we just push it forward because we can enhance tech, and instead of making those questions a bit vague, we can make them direct questions. That's what we do with science fiction for the best, and that's what I try to do. I'm glad that it passed to you, and we will always be mimicking stuff and taking stuff from other things, but I thought that I had a core that was good enough to sustain all of that. And like you said, that's an interesting question for the future, and really how we deal with technology will be more and more important, because technology is now able to govern a lot of systems that we have. And there is not, European Union, for example, is known for being the most advanced legislative body that exists. Like, they have legislation for everything, and they are the tip of the spear on, for example, on fines on Facebook and all those big companies and big tech. They are right now the foremost organization in trying to find a way to deal with all the tech that we have and all the stuff that we have to deal with. So it's pretty interesting stuff to think about.
I completely agree. So I highly recommend it for everybody out there listening. It is easy to pick up. I actually found it on Comixology. That was the fastest and easiest way I could find it. However, I would definitely try to find this in a trade paperback to see if it's still out there. This is something I do want on my shelf. So
nice.
Highly recommended.
I will definitely look into it. Thank you, Jake.
You're welcome. All right. So this is my favorite part of every show. This is the Grail Tale segment. So Andre, we're going to ask you, what's your Grail Tale?
You mean the book?
Yes.
I always have a lot of difficulties with these things, but I've thought about it many times. Like, if I had to say a book that for me is the book that I, like my holy grail, which one would it be? It's got to be Akira.
Oh, okay.
I always come down to that one as being, because I have like two types of things that I like. I broke it down like that, which is I have a bunch of stuff that I like in the same level, of adoration almost, which is either stuff that I like and I want to do stuff like that, and stuff that I like and I have no desire whatsoever to do stuff like that. For example, I can give you a couple of examples. Akira, I want to do stuff like that, and you can see that on Men Plus and on my stuff. Not exactly like that, but there's a lot of qualities there that I want to emulate, and I hope that I'm emulating. And then there are other things, other types of books that I love, or even movies. For example, Tarantino movie. I love Tarantino movies. I don't want to make movies like that or stories like that. I don't want to tell stories like that. That's not me at all. I don't think like that. I don't talk like that. I don't see stories or characters like he does. There's stuff on the abstract side, like he takes a lot of care with storytelling, obviously, and that I want to do. But the specificity of his stuff is not the way that I do it. So, breaking it down like that, I get down to the book that I think it's the one for me that is the one I keep going back to, and the one that has influenced me the most. It's got to be Akira for a number of reasons. Number one, it's amazing. Okay, it's really good, and that's the reason number one. Two, is really pretty to look at, so it's really well drawn, and that's something that I value a lot. I want to make really pretty stuff, because in a comic book, there's the visual medium. If you have a pretty drawing, like on page 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, people will buy that book. If you have they might drop you later if the story is not good. So the substance will always be the heart of the matter here, but it will get people into your stuff. So what got me into Akira was that I saw a panel of him of that book in another book that I had that was How to Make Comics, and I just thought I need to get this book. It was one panel, one. That's all I need. I had said I need to know who this guy is, what he does, and I need this book, and I bought all of them. And then it's also written and drawn by the same person, which I really appreciate. It gives a cohesion to the work that I don't think you can get anywhere else. And in America, the work is very breakdown into specials like writing and drawing and coloring and inking and all that. And in other places like France and Japan, you have a lot of guys, like a one-guy team or two people doing the book, and that's it. And there's a lot of that you can get from something like that. And then the story, the themes, the characters, the designs, it's all there. I think there's nothing in that book that I don't like, or that there's nothing that I said, I didn't like how he did that, or how he was breaking it down into chapters, or how the story worked, or how the action was made. I like all of it. So it's the most complete thing that I can find that approach my own taste as an author.
When did you discover it? Like, when in your career did you?
I was a teenager when I saw it. I remember two things from finding Akira. I remember finding the book, that it was in that one panel from How to Make Comic Books, like a book that I had. And I remember, because when I was a teenager, internet was still a pretty shaky thing, like in the late 90s. And I remember watching the trailer for the movie on an old VHS tape that I have from Golgo 13. You guys know that movie? Yeah, there was a trailer for Akira, and I bought it when I was like 13 years old. And the image that I remember was the guts falling from Kanada's belly.
Yes.
Because when he was so high on drugs or in withdrawal, I can't remember anymore. And it was easy imagination. It was not, but I imagine you are 12 years old and you see the guts falling from a guy's stomach. And just, I want to watch this movie. I need to know more about this. So I was at that age, and then I remember investigating and collecting a lot of images throughout the years when internet was, picking it up. And I remember buying the book when I was in my late teens and the first couple of years of college as well. I was buying the collection book by book. We have a colored version in Portuguese that is the same colored version that you guys have in America from Steve Olive, and is collected in 19 volumes. So I got that collection first.
Wow.
Then I got the black and white normal collection, and now I have the 35 anniversary edition, which is the prettiest thing that I have.
So
Nice.
every version of every copy you can get, you have, is what it sounds like.
Yeah. That's my favorite book as well, because I was thinking I have 3 copies of that book, so that's got to be it, because I don't think I have 2 copies of anything else.
There's no way this was a hard decision for you.
I know.
No, I never thought about it like consciously until a couple of years ago or something. Like because I was thinking if I had to say because there's a lot of that online. It must have been some tweet or something that prompted it in my mind. Like, what's your favorite movie ever? And I started just mentally listing my options for those when it wasn't super clear for me. For example, in movies, it's not super clear for me which is my favorite one ever. But I keep going back to 2001: Space Odyssey. It's still like there's enough in it that puts it above everything else. So it's like that.
I mean, clearly, I think your grail is not just evident, but it's evident in the work that you do and the stories that you tell, which is wonderful, right? Like it inspired you, and you are taking it and doing your own thing, which I think is amazing. From your own personal work standpoint, I like to ask this question: is there something that you've done that you don't think there were enough eyes on? Something that you think or that you would love if people saw more?
That I've done?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were talking about Men Plus and saying that it didn't make any money because it sold very few copies. I'd like more people to, because it is the created on stuff that I did until now. I think it's not that it deserved more, because I don't think that's really fair to say. It got what it got, But I expected it to pick a bit more of traction because I think it's really good stuff. It's really good stories. It's Man Plus and Generation Gone that I did with Alex Scott back in 2017. And those are 2 really good books. And if you like my artwork, like on those books, you'll get the best version of it because it was created on. Like I was creating all of it visually speaking. And I always say, as a creator, as a reader, I'm always interested, first and foremost, about created on stuff, because that's when you really see the creators with no filters at all. That's them. That's their designs. That's their choices. That's their way of thinking. It's all there. So if you like my stuff, I'd always say, go pick up Men Plus, go read Generation Gone, and go try that stuff out, because it's really good stories.
Wonderful. Can we expect any more creator-owned stuff from you, whether it be more Man Plus, which I would read more of, or something else?
Oh yeah, I have like 8 or 9 pitches that have artwork and stuff like that, and those pitches are the one is the stuff that, like, a first version of Man Plus is what got me my Marvel job. My artwork from my pitches is what got me numerous contacts through the years, like with Rick Remender, for example, which I think it goes back to 2016, where through Twitter, like, he followed me and I approached him via direct message. I always move forward to people that I want to work with, and I sent him a bunch of created on things that I had already at the time, and he saw that stuff, and that's when I started thinking about doing something, and got me the work with Brian Bendis, like years later, which is also created on stuff. So that book with Brian, you will see probably next year, because it is done. I've drawn it already.
Okay.
And I spent like the last year drawing that, and now I'm drawing Righteous Thirst, and it's like this a bit stupid thing that one is first and the other, but in the end you'll get both books. But the one with Brian is done, and it's created on as well, and it's a bonkers book. And I definitely want to do more of this, just because created on is really my passion, and I have so many projects in the back pocket. Like, I have epic stuff, I have smaller stuff, I have science fiction, I have fantasy, I have mystical, crazy Western. I have just so much. I have historical stuff because I'm crazy about Middle Ages and all that,
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So
right.
you got it all from me.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I'll certainly be keeping it on my radar as well. We are kind of coming to the ending of the show. We always like to end the show with speculation. we have a lot of collectors, a lot of readers, people who are, they're picking up these books. Some of them are sometimes looking for additional value later. A lot of people like to make the hobby pay for itself, as it were. So we always end with the speculation just to say that we think this is a book maybe worth looking into. Jesus, I'm going to let you lead it off.
All right, man. So I have one real quick one. There's been a lot of rumors going around about Wolverine. We've been talking about it. Somebody being recast in the role, reprising the role. So I'm not gonna get.
I wonder who that could be.
I don't know. There's so many Wolverine actors that have played Wolverine over the years, over the past decade and a half or so. But this book has also been kind of climbing because the first appearance, 181 for Wolverine, is so high. But I just want to say it's two cool things on this book. It's Wolverine number 88. It has a sweet cover, a red cover. It's the first battle of Wolverine versus Deadpool. And as we know, Deadpool has been confirmed in the MCU with Korg. He's been on the screen with Korg. There's also, for sure, I think we're getting a third movie of Deadpool. So Deadpool and Wolverine coming together. This book is going to go up higher. Right now, 9.8s are selling between $350 and $425. So I definitely anticipate that is going to be a floor if the actor reprises his role.
Very nice. Okay, Andre, you may not be a speculator. It may not be something you do, but do you have some sort of an underrated book or something you want to toss out, something you like?
I can do that. I'm no speculator at all. I don't know how these things evolve usually. I'm not, but one of the best books that I've read in the last years, like several years, is Little Bird from Darcy Von Polgist and Ian Bertram. Like, that thing is amazing. And I think it sold really well. It's from Image Comics, so Little Bird. And that is a hell of a book, I will tell you that. And I met Darcy in New York Comic Con, like 2019, and I met him because of that book. Like, I got in touch with him because I love the book so much, and I told him, listen, man, one of these days we need to do something together. And we tried, but now I got busy because we discussed it like a book or another or something like that. We exchanged a few ideas and we tried, but I got so busy that we had to drop it. But it's certainly one of my favorite writers, and Ian Bertram is just an amazing artist, and the stuff that he does. And they are doing the sequel to Little Bird, which is Precious Metal. So it's just like impeccable storytelling, amazing design, just completely. That's stuff that you can only find in comics. Like, it's such a weird, crazy, and beautiful book that I will tell you, just pick it up and read it. You will not regret it.
And one thing real quick before Jake says anything, at least me, I really take your recommendations from writers and artists right to the heart, because I'll give you an example. Martin Morazzo, the co-creator of Ice Cream Man, is the one who told us about A Righteous Thirst for Vengeance initially, because I think he's an insider and he was able to read the first 4 issues, and he told us that we need to read that book. So you're telling us about this book, I'm definitely going to pick it up. So thank you, Andre.
I imagine you got them through Chris, because Chris is coloring our book as well.
Oh, probably.
Something like that. He didn't really disclose how he got a hold of him, but he did say that he read him and he loved him.
I'm going to talk to him. It's not over yet.
We just got Martin in trouble.
No, I'm joking. I'm really glad, because it's like Jesus was saying. For me, the same thing. When an artist, you got to read this book, I will immediately, like Jesus was talking about those books before, and I searched something about who. What was the name?
Search for Who.
Yeah, I immediately searched it as well, and I have it open in a tab because I got immediately curious about it.
Yeah, I wrote it down myself. Mm-hmm. And no, you hit the nail on the head when it comes to speculation. Value is one thing, but just speculating on a book that people maybe didn't get on earlier, a couple years ago. I did not read Little Bird, but I'm very intrigued now, so I'm going to go ahead and give it a read. Yeah. So yeah, that's definitely in the spirit of the segment. So I'm going to wrap this up with a sci-fi spec that I will say I chose something science fiction, not just because there was something recently in the news, but I thought it fit the our guest. So This is Predator #1 from 1989. This is a Dark Horse book. It is, in my opinion, kind of an undervalued book at the moment. Marvel acquired the rights to both Alien and Predator in 2020, and a lot of people have seen the first Alien book from Dark Horse. It's a very valuable book now. It's very expensive, not too easy to get either. The Predator book is a lot more affordable for the most part. But Disney just recently announced, or for Disney Plus, they announced that they're producing a Predator prequel movie that will be released on Hulu in 2022. They're, interestingly enough, keeping the 20th Century Fox banner for the film, but Predator, I'm a huge fan of the original movie. Get to the chopper, everybody knows it. But the to do a prequel, this one is going to be set. I think I read that it's going to be set some 300 years prior, or something like that.
That's good.
Yeah, the name of it's called Prey. I think it's called Prey.
Yep.
And I think I forgot. It's like with a tribe or something, and they battle. So it's pretty interesting, man. I forgot about it, but it's pretty interesting. I'm definitely interested in that. And you mentioned Alien is super expensive. I anticipate Predator going up, but Alien is a lot harder to get because it's a black cover, and it just shows so many defects on it real fast. The Predator, to me, is a better cover itself. It's red. It has a Predator in all his glory on the top of it. So it's pretty cool. It's one of my books that I want to get, but I want to get it in a 9.8 because it's a fairly modern book, but it's hard to get.
But you mentioned the artwork. I do love the artwork on that book. So if you're out there and you're looking for something, I would see if you're just digging through some of the back bins and things like that. If you come across a Predator #1, I think it's worth picking up and just seeing the crossover as well that Dark Horse did with Predator and Alien. Those are also fun books to go look for as well. So I'm a huge fan of 80s sci-fi, as most people are. But that's what I've got. Andre, that is going to be the end of our show. And I'd like to just, before we end and cut out, let's go ahead and say, where can the listeners go and find you on the internets?
Well, they can find me, and they can reach out to me directly on Twitter or Instagram. They just search for my name and you will find me pretty easily there. And for a more comprehensive thing, and if you want any work contacts and stuff like that, usually goes through my website, which is myname.com as well. So André Lima Araújo, all just in one word.com, and you'll get there. It has contact and all that kind of stuff. So you can find me there. I'm usually regularly on Twitter and Instagram, so you can talk to me there.
Wonderful. Yes, definitely go hit him up and go look for those books. I said I would come back to A Righteous Thirst for Vengeance. Issue #3 is coming out December 22nd. Issue #4 is coming out January 19th. If you haven't read it yet, go pick up the first 2 issues if they're still available out there, and definitely pick up the new ones when they come out. It is well worth the time. You're not gonna be disappointed. Both visually and storytelling are on point. So,
yeah, I think just to say, it's great stuff that you'll get from our book, and it's selling out. So if you want the issues, you need to go get them now.
Yes,
they're sold out #1 and all that. So get on board because it's a great story. You'll not regret it.
Absolutely, completely agree. Andre, thank you so much for coming on with us. It was a pleasure. We will, I'm sure, pimp your books later down the road as well. We'll make sure that we let everybody know when they're coming out. They're going to be on our recent pickup list for sure.
Thank you very much as well, guys.
Absolutely. Hey, Zeus, thanks for coming back, of course. And everybody, have a good week.